The morning of my son's wedding, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror and fastened my grandmother's pearl necklace the way I'd done 100 times before. The clasp was small and stubborn. My fingers were steady, but I still took my time, because rushing on a day like that never helped anyone. From the hallway, I heard Jessica's voice, soft, pleasant, the same tone she used when other people were listening. "Just keep her at the side," she said. "I don't want any surprises." It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but it landed in my chest like a simple fact, said out loud at last. I looked at myself for a moment longer than I needed to. Then I adjusted the necklace so it sat flat, and I smoothed the front of my navy dress. Nothing flashy, nothing that asked for attention. I had learned over time that people treat you the way they first decide you are. On the kitchen counter behind me was a plain white envelope I hadn't opened yet. My name was typed on the front, and the return address was just a suite number downtown. I'd told myself I would deal with it after the wedding. I left it where it was. I didn't confront Jessica in the hallway. I didn't make a face or ask her what she meant. I simply picked up my small clutch, checked that I had my reading glasses, and walked out like I hadn't heard a thing. In the car on the way to the estate, the sky was bright and pale, the kind of Virginia morning that looks calm even when you don't feel calm. My son, Dylan, sat beside me in the back seat. He kept tapping his knee lightly, like he had extra energy he didn't know what to do with. His tie was already perfect, but he adjusted it anyway. "You okay, Mom?" he asked, watching me the way he used to when he was little and sick. "I'm fine," I said, "just thinking." And I was. Mostly about how a sentence said in a hallway can change the shape of a day, even if nobody else hears it. When we arrived, the Reynolds estate looked like something designed to impress from a distance. Long drive, trimmed hedges, staff moving quietly like they'd rehearsed. The chapel sat back from the main house, white and clean, with doors so tall they seemed unnecessary. Inside, the air smelled like flowers and polished wood. I sat where I was guided, hands folded, posture still. People smiled at me the way people smile when they're being polite and efficient. A few nodded as if they recognized me from somewhere, though they couldn't place it. I nodded back. I didn't try to belong more than I did. I've never been good at pretending. Jessica walked down the aisle in a dress that made the room go silent. The fabric caught the light with every step, and the veil was so fine it looked like mist. Dylan's face changed when he saw her. Not exaggerated, not theatrical, just honest. He looked like a man who had decided he wanted to be happy again. I felt something soft in my throat, and I swallowed it. Then I watched. That's what I do when I don't know what else to do. After the ceremony, the reception opened into gardens that looked carefully arranged to seem effortless. There were ice sculptures near the entrance, an orchestra already playing, and tables set with linens that didn't wrinkle. Servers moved with trays of champagne, smiling without showing teeth. The whole thing was beautiful in the way money can make things beautiful. Smooth edges, no waiting, no visible strain. Jessica's mother, Paula, approached me once. She didn't introduce herself like a normal person would. She simply looked me over, head slightly tilted, as if she was checking whether I matched the setting. "You're Emily," she said. "Yes," I answered. She held the pause a moment, then smiled politely and moved on. Nothing else. No warmth, no interest. Just a quick decision made and filed away. I found my table near the corner, exactly where place cards tend to send the person they don't quite know what to do with. From there I could see the dance floor, the bar, the main family table, and the walkways between. I could also see how often Jessica glanced toward me, even when she was smiling at someone else. I sat, I folded my napkin, and I waited. Later, when Dylan and Jessica stepped onto the dance floor for the first time as a married couple, the room leaned toward them. Cameras lifted, phones came out. People murmured quietly, as if they were watching something delicate. That's when I saw Jessica turn away from the dance floor and start walking toward me, with her parents at her sides, moving like a single unit. And I stayed in my seat, calm and still, as they closed the distance. Jessica stopped at the edge of my table and smiled down at me, the kind of smile that holds its shape a second too long. "Mom, Dad," she said lightly, placing a hand on her father's arm, "I want you to finally meet Dylan's mother." Robert Reynolds looked at me the way people do when they think they recognize someone but can't place where. His eyes narrowed slightly, then widened. It was subtle, but I saw it. I've always noticed small changes like that. "Emily Turner," he said, almost to himself. I didn't correct him. I didn't prompt him. I simply met his gaze and waited. For a moment the music from the orchestra felt louder, then quieter, like my attention was narrowing around the table. People were laughing somewhere behind us. Glasses clinked. A server paused, sensing something but not knowing what. "Excuse me," Robert said, leaning forward just enough that his wife noticed. "Weren't you at the Reynolds Holdings acquisition meeting 3 years ago?" Jessica let out a small laugh, quick and dismissive. "Daddy, you're confusing her with someone else." But Robert didn't look at her. He was looking at me now, with certainty settling in. "You were quiet," he continued. "You let your attorneys speak. Navy dress, pearl necklace." The pearls felt heavier against my collarbone, not uncomfortable, just present. "I think you're mistaken," I said evenly. He straightened, breath catching slightly. "No," he said. "You're the investor, the one who bought my company." The words moved through the space between us faster than I expected. Not shouted, not announced, just spoken clearly enough to be heard. Jessica's smile faltered. Paula's hand moved to her bracelet, twisting at once. I felt the attention of the nearby tables shift without fully turning yet, like animals sensing motion. "I should rejoin the dance," Jessica said quickly, her voice tight. "You must be tired, Emily." She reached for her father's arm, but he didn't move. His eyes were still on me, searching, confirming. "Emily," he said again, softer this time. "It's you." I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I simply gave a small nod, the kind you give when a conversation has reached its end, whether you wanted it to or not. "I need some air," I said, rising carefully from my chair. No one stopped me. No one knew how. I walked past the bar, past the edge of the dance floor, and out through the garden doors. The night air was cool and smelled faintly of flowers and damp stone. I stood there for a moment with my hands resting lightly on the railing, listening to the music through the glass. Then I took my phone out, set it face down, and waited. I left the reception quietly after that. No announcement, no goodbye tour. I told a staff member I wasn't feeling well and asked her to let Dylan know I'd gone home. She nodded without questions. People like that are trained not to ask. Back in my apartment, I kicked off my shoes and sat at the small kitchen table. The envelope from the counter was still there. I slid it closer but didn't open it yet. Instead, I poured myself a glass of water and drank it slowly. My phone buzzed just after midnight. Dylan's name lit up the screen. "Mom," he said when I answered. "What just happened?" I closed my eyes briefly, then opened them again. "We'll talk tomorrow," I said. "Not tonight." There was a pause. "Okay," he said, though I could hear the questions piling up behind the word. After we hung up, I finally opened the envelope. Inside were copies of documents I already knew well, ownership summaries, board signatures, dates that lined up cleanly. I stacked them neatly, slid them back inside, and placed the envelope in the drawer beside my table. Then I stood at the sink, rinsed my glass, and dried it by hand. Outside, the city was quiet in that late-night way that feels temporary. I turned off the kitchen light, went to bed, and lay there listening to the hum of the refrigerator through the wall. I didn't sleep much. By morning, I knew the quiet was over. The next morning, I made coffee the way I always do. Same mug, same amount of cream. I stood at the counter while it brewed and watched the steam rise, letting the routine slow my breathing. Outside, someone started a car and let it idle too long. A normal sound on a normal morning. Dylan arrived just after 7. He didn't knock. He still has his key, though he rarely uses it. I heard the door open and close, then his footsteps moving back and forth across the living room. When I came in with 2 cups of coffee, he was standing by the window, jacket still on. He took the cup from me without sitting. "Robert Reynolds pulled me aside after you left," he said. "He asked questions about Dad, about patents, about you." I nodded once and sat down. "What kind of questions?" "The kind that don't come from nowhere," he said. He finally turned to face me. His eyes looked tired, like he hadn't slept either. "He thinks you bought his company." I didn't answer right away. I put my cup down and waited until the silence stretched enough to feel solid. "Dylan," I said, "sit down." He did, but only on the edge of the chair, like he might leave again if he didn't like what he heard. "There are things about your father's work and our finances that I didn't share with you," I said. "Not because I didn't trust you, because we made a decision a long time ago." He ran a hand through his hair, the same habit he's had since he was 12. "Mom, I built my life thinking—" "I know," I said, "and you built it yourself." His phone buzzed on the table between us. He glanced at it, then pushed it slightly toward me so I could see the screen. Jessica's name. "She wants lunch today," he said. "Says there are things we should talk about now that we're family." I looked at the name, then away. "She's efficient." He frowned. "That's not an answer." "It's an observation," I said. We agreed to meet her later that afternoon. After Dylan left, I washed the mugs and dried them carefully, then went to my desk and opened the drawer with the envelope from the night before. I laid the documents out in order, not to review them, I knew them by memory, but to remind myself that facts don't change just because someone notices them. At the restaurant, Jessica was already seated when we arrived. She'd chosen a place with white tablecloths and low voices, the kind of room where people talk about money without saying numbers out loud. She stood to greet us, hugged Dylan, then kissed my cheek lightly, as if we'd always done that. "I ordered wine," she said. "Something special." "That's kind of you," I replied, and took my seat. She didn't waste time. After a few minutes of polite conversation, she leaned forward slightly, hands folded. "Dad told me about a meeting he had years ago, an acquisition. He says the investor reminded him of you." Dylan looked at me, waiting. "What did he say reminded him?" I asked. "The posture," she said, "the way you let others talk for you, the way you don't fill silence." I took a sip of water. "Those are common traits." She smiled, but her eyes stayed sharp. "Not in women, usually." I let that pass. She pulled out her phone and placed it on the table, turning the screen toward us. An article, a grainy photo from a signing event, a woman half obscured by people in suits, wearing a navy dress. "It's probably nothing," Jessica said. "Just a coincidence." Dylan leaned closer, studying the image. He didn't speak. I sat back and folded my hands in my lap. "Coincidences do happen," I said. Jessica watched me for a long moment, as if measuring how much pressure to apply next. Then she smiled again, brighter this time. "Still," she said, "it's fascinating how privacy works, how much people can build without anyone noticing." The waiter arrived with the wine. He poured. We thanked him. The pause felt intentional. When he left, Dylan finally spoke. "Mom," he said quietly, "is there something I should know?" I looked at my son, really looked at him, and understood that the careful distance I'd maintained for years had reached its limit. "There is," I said, "but not here." Jessica's expression tightened, just a fraction. "Of course," she said. "We'll talk later, as a family." I nodded once. After lunch, Dylan walked me to my car. He didn't say much. Before he closed the door, he leaned in. "I just want the truth," he said. "I know," I replied, "and you'll have it." That evening, alone again, I sat at my desk and opened a fresh folder. On the first page, I wrote 3 lines. Step 1, clarity. Step 2, boundaries. Step 3, documentation. I closed the folder and set it beside the others. Then I waited. 3 days passed without a word from Jessica. Dylan didn't call either. I didn't chase either silence. I went to the grocery store, bought the same things I always buy, stood in line behind a woman arguing about coupons, and carried my bags home myself. The world kept moving at its usual pace. That mattered to me. On the 4th morning, my phone rang just after 9. James Sullivan's name came up. I answered it at my desk, already seated, already expecting the call. "They've started asking questions," he said without greeting. "Not formally yet, carefully." I wrote his words down even though I wouldn't need them later. Writing slows things down. "Who is they?" I asked. "Jessica," he said. "And someone she hired, professional, quiet. They're tracing shell structures. Nothing illegal so far, just curiosity with funding." I closed the notebook. "How exposed am I?" "You're protected," he said. "But privacy works best when you're ahead of the narrative, not reacting to it." "I know," I said. After we hung up, I didn't move right away. I stayed at the desk and looked at the framed photo of Thomas on the shelf. He was smiling in that picture, not for the camera, but because I'd said something dry under my breath just before it was taken. "All right," I said quietly. Step 1. I spent the rest of the morning organizing documents I already had. Not searching, not digging, just arranging, dates, ownership paths, board minutes, clean lines, no emotion. Paper doesn't respond to pressure, and that's why I trust it. In the afternoon, Dylan finally came by. He looked tired again, shoulders slightly rounded, like he was carrying something heavier than he wanted to admit. "Jessica's been asking a lot of questions," he said once he sat down, "about trusts, about family planning, about what happens if something were ever to happen to you." I nodded. "And how do you feel about that?" He hesitated. "It feels fast." "Yes," I said, "it does." He looked at me carefully. "Mom, I need to know what we're dealing with." I stood and went to the cabinet by the window. From the bottom drawer, I took out a single folder, thin, labeled in my handwriting. I placed it on the table between us but didn't open it. "This is not everything," I said. "It's enough." He didn't touch it at first. "Why now?" "Because the questions have changed," I replied, "and because silence only works when it's chosen." He opened the folder slowly. Inside were summaries, not numbers meant to impress, ownership confirmations, legal signatures, dates spanning more than a decade. He read quietly. His breathing changed once, then again. "This is substantial," he said. "Yes." "You bought Reynolds Holdings," he said, looking up. "Yes." He closed the folder but kept his hand on it. "She's going to find out." "She already suspects," I said. "The difference is control." He rubbed his forehead. "I don't want to be in the middle of this." "I don't want you to be either," I said. "That's why we do this properly." I slid another page across the table, a simple outline. "Step 1, I said, pointing. "You stay out of financial discussions that don't involve you directly." He nodded slowly. Step 2, I continued. We respond only through counsel, no personal explanations, no dinners framed as conversations. And step 3, he asked. Boundaries, I said. Written, clear, enforced. He leaned back in his chair and exhaled. She's not going to like that. No, I agreed, but liking something isn't required. That evening, after Dylan left, I received an email from an unfamiliar address, polite, structured, requesting a meeting to discuss family financial alignment. I read it once, then again, then I forwarded it to James without comment. I put the phone face down, then I waited. The reply came the next morning, formal this time, lawyers included, a meeting request, downtown. I marked the date on my calendar in pencil, sharpened it, and placed it back in the drawer. The first shift had already happened, not because I'd raised my voice or revealed anything dramatic, but because the rules were no longer unspoken, and that changes everything. The meeting was scheduled for Monday morning. James's office, glass walls, neutral furniture, nothing designed to impress. I arrived 10 minutes early and sat where I was directed, my hands resting in my lap, my bag placed neatly at my feet. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. James joined me with a nod and a thin folder under his arm. They're bringing counsel, he said quietly. And her parents. I expected that, I said. We waited. Waiting has always been useful to me. It shows people what they do when no one rushes to fill the space. When they arrived, the room changed temperature slightly. Jessica came in first, posture straight, expression prepared. Dylan followed behind her, slower, eyes tired. Robert and Paula Reynolds entered last, Paula scanning the room the way she does when she wants to understand the balance of power before she speaks. Their attorney introduced himself with practiced warmth. We sat. Water was poured. No one touched it. The lawyer spoke first. He talked about family transparency, about alignment, about concerns raised after recent discoveries. He used words like responsibility and fairness without defining either. I listened. I didn't interrupt. When he finished, James looked at me. I nodded once. I want to be very clear, I said, keeping my voice level. I am not here to debate my private finances. I am here to set terms. Jessica leaned forward slightly. Emily, no one is attacking you. We just think— I raised a hand, not sharply. Just enough. This meeting will work better if we speak one at a time, I said, and if we speak to facts. She leaned back again. The movement was controlled, but her jaw tightened. I opened my bag and placed a single document on the table. 1 page. Clean. No highlights. This outlines the ownership structure of Reynolds Holdings, I said. As acquired 3 years ago, it confirms compliance with all regulatory requirements. Her father glanced at it, then away. The acquisition was legal, I continued. The management changes were standard. The consulting arrangements were disclosed and compensated at market rates. Her lawyer cleared his throat. No one is disputing legality. The concern is influence, family impact. Influence exists whenever people make decisions, I said. It is not a violation. I let that sit. Jessica spoke again, carefully. You changed the course of our family's future without ever telling us who you were. I didn't change your family's future, I replied. I prevented a collapse. Your father's company was over-leveraged. The records reflect that. Robert shifted in his chair but didn't argue. James slid another document forward. This outlines the current financial position of the Reynolds estate, he said. Public filings, loan disclosures. Paula's hand went still on the table. We are not here to threaten, the lawyer said quickly. We're here to propose cooperation. I nodded. Then I'll respond in steps. I held up one finger. Step 1, I said. All inquiries into my finances stop immediately. No investigators. No regulatory fishing. I raised a second finger. Step 2. Any communication regarding assets, trusts, or future planning goes through counsel, not over meals, not through family channels. Jessica inhaled, then spoke. And step 3? I looked directly at her. Step 3 is distance. Until trust exists, access does not. Dylan shifted beside her. He didn't look at me. He looked at the table. That's not a partnership, Jessica said. No, I agreed. It's a boundary. The room went quiet. Even the hum of the building felt louder. Her lawyer leaned in. Mrs. Turner, are you saying you're unwilling to support family continuity? I'm saying I support clarity, I replied. Continuity comes later, if earned. Jessica's composure slipped for just a second. You're punishing us. I shook my head. I'm organizing reality. James closed his folder. We'll circulate written terms, he said. You can review them with your counsel. The meeting ended without raised voices. Chairs moved, hands were shaken. Dylan hesitated near the door, then followed his wife out without speaking. After they left, I stayed seated. I didn't gather my things right away. I waited until the room felt empty again. That went as expected, James said. Yes, I replied. On the drive home, I didn't turn on the radio. I watched traffic lights change. I stopped when I was supposed to stop. I went when I was supposed to go. At home, I set my bag down, took off my coat, and placed the meeting notes in the drawer with the others. Then I made tea and stood by the window while it steeped. My phone buzzed once, a message from an unknown number. We need to talk. This isn't finished. I read it. I didn't respond. I put the phone face down. Then I waited. The call from James came 2 days later, late afternoon. I was folding laundry when the phone rang. I finished pairing the socks before I answered. She's escalated, he said. Formal inquiries this time. Not public yet, but deliberate. I sat down at the small table by the window. How far? Requests filed. Regulatory questions framed as concern for undisclosed influence. It's clean on paper, but it forces attention. I closed my eyes for a moment. Then I opened them. All right. That evening, Dylan came over again. He didn't take off his coat. He stood near the door like he might leave at any second. She's filing for separation, he said. No preface, no build-up. I nodded once. I'm sorry. He let out a short breath. Her lawyer says it's precautionary, to protect herself from liability. I waited. Silence gives people space to keep going. She thinks you're hiding more, he said. That if she applies enough pressure, you'll negotiate. I looked at my son, really looked at him. His shoulders were tight, his eyes unfocused. And what do you think? I think I don't recognize my own life, he said. And I don't know where I fit in any of this. I reached for the folder on the table but didn't open it. Then let me be clear about something, I said. This is no longer emotional. It's procedural. He frowned. That sounds cold. It's stable, I replied. I slid a single page toward him. Not numbers, not charts, just a short outline. From this point forward, I said, there are rules. He read quietly. Rule 1, I don't discuss assets with anyone outside counsel. Rule 2, I don't respond to threats, implied or otherwise. Rule 3, I resolve conflict once. He looked up. Once? Yes, I said. Cleanly. He swallowed. What does that mean for Jessica? It means she gets a choice, I said, and so do you. The next morning, James and I met again. He had already prepared the documents. I reviewed them slowly, pen in hand, correcting language, removing anything that sounded emotional. Precision matters when things get sharp. By noon, the offer was ready. A settlement, one time, finite. in exchange for full withdrawal of complaints, non-disclosure, and no future contact. That's generous, James said. It's efficient, I replied. We sent it through counsel, then we waited. Waiting is different when you've already decided. It's quieter. That afternoon, Dylan called. She wants to know if this is real, he said. It's real, I answered. She says it feels like you're buying her silence. No, I said, I'm buying closure. There was a long pause. I could hear his breathing. And if she refuses? Then the rules stay in place, I said, and the process continues. By evening, my phone rang again. This time it was James. They're considering, he said. Her attorney understands the math. I went into the kitchen and filled the kettle. Let me know. At 11:47 the next morning, the confirmation came. Acceptance, conditions met, complaints withdrawn. I thanked James and ended the call. I stood at the sink and watched the kettle boil. When it clicked off, I poured the water, added the tea, and waited for it to steep. Dylan came by later that day. He sat without speaking for a long time. She took it, he said finally. Yes, I replied. He nodded slowly, like something heavy had finally landed. Then I guess I know. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. After he left, I gathered the remaining documents, placed them in a single envelope, and wrote one word on the front. Closed. I put it in the drawer, turned off the light in my office, and went to bed early. For the first time in weeks, the apartment felt still again. The divorce moved faster than I expected, not because anyone rushed it, but because there was nothing left to argue about. Papers were filed, dates were set, signatures collected. I watched it happen from a distance, the way you watch a storm move across a field when you're no longer standing in it. Dylan came by one evening a few weeks later. He looked lighter somehow, not happier exactly, but steadier. He took off his coat, folded it neatly, and placed it over the chair without being asked. That told me more than anything he said. She's gone, he said, moved out of the city. I nodded. That's probably best. He sat quietly for a while. The clock on the wall ticked. Outside, someone was walking a dog, the leash clicking softly against the sidewalk. I keep replaying things, he said. Conversations. Moments that didn't feel right at the time. That's normal, I replied. Understanding usually comes late. He looked at me. Did you ever think this would happen? No, I said, but I prepared for the possibility that it might. That answer seemed to settle him. He leaned back, exhaled slowly, and rested his hands on his knees. A few days later, James sent me the final confirmations. Withdrawals acknowledged. Complaints closed. No further action pending. I read the email once, then archived it. There was no need to revisit it again. I went through my files that afternoon, not to review them, but to reduce them. Old folders were consolidated, redundant copies shredded. I kept only what mattered, neatly labeled, stored out of sight. Order is a form of rest. The Reynolds family faded from my life exactly the way they had entered it, through paperwork and silence. No apologies, no final words, just absence, and that was enough. One morning, Dylan called and asked if I wanted to get breakfast. Not to talk, just to eat. We met at a small place near his apartment. He ordered the same thing he always orders. I ordered tea. I'm taking a week off, he said, just to reset. That sounds wise, I said. He smiled faintly. I might even leave my phone at home. I smiled back. After that, life began to take on its older rhythm again. Grocery trips, laundry, morning walks. I found myself lingering longer at the park near my building, sitting on the same bench, watching people pass without wondering what they thought of me. One afternoon, while sorting mail, I found a handwritten note from a former colleague of Thomas's. He mentioned a student group struggling to fund a prototype. Bright minds, limited resources. I set the note aside, face down, and finished sorting the rest. That evening, I poured a glass of wine and opened a new notebook. On the first page, I wrote Thomas's name. Under it, I listed ideas. Nothing ambitious, nothing public, just practical support where it would matter. Before bed, I washed the glass, dried it, and put it away. The apartment was quiet. Not the tense quiet from before, but the kind that feels earned. I turned off the lights, went to bed, and slept through the night. In the morning, I woke up knowing that the part of my life defined by reaction was over. What came next would be chosen. I sold the apartment a month later, not because I needed to, but because I didn't want to keep living inside a chapter that had already closed. I packed slowly. I cleaned as I went. When I found old notes and duplicate paperwork, I shredded them and took the bag out myself. The place looked lighter when I was done. So did I. I moved to Santa Fe in early spring. No announcements, no explanations. Just a small house with morning light in the kitchen and a quiet street where people waved without asking questions. I learned the rhythm of the local market. I bought bread from the same stall each week. I walked without a destination and came home when I felt finished. A few weeks in, I opened a modest account and registered a small private fund in Thomas's name. Nothing flashy, no press. The purpose was simple: support young engineers who had ideas but no backing. I reviewed applications myself at the dining table, coffee cooling beside me, notes written in the margins. When I approved one, I didn't call attention to it. I signed, filed, and moved on. Dylan visited in the summer. He brought a woman named Sarah. She shook my hand warmly and thanked me for having them. We ate dinner on the patio. No one mentioned money. No one measured anyone else. When they left, Dylan hugged me longer than usual. Later that night, I washed the dishes and left them to dry. I stood at the sink for a while, watching the sky darken, feeling something settle that had been restless for years. Every now and then someone reaches out quietly, a former colleague, a neighbor's niece, a situation that feels familiar. I listen. I don't promise anything, but I keep a list now, not of assets, of people who might need steady help without attention. Most mornings are simple: tea, a short walk, reading at the table, silence that doesn't ask anything from me. That's the life I wanted, even before I knew how to say it out loud. I don't regret the years I stayed private. They served their purpose, but I've learned there's a difference between being invisible and being intentional. One hides you, the other protects you. If you stayed with me through this story, thank you. If it reminded you of someone you know, or something you've lived through, you're not alone in that. Before you go, I'd love it if you'd gently like the video and subscribe if these stories feel like a place you want to return to. And if you're comfortable, tell me in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. I read those more than you might think. 2 of the community's favorite stories will be waiting for you on the end screen. I hope one of them keeps you company a little longer.